Hello, everyone. Welcome to Walk the Parks. My name is Blake. I've been super fortunate in that I've hiked over 20,000 miles, and today I'm going to take you on a hike of the Devil's Garden Trail. Now, the Devil's Garden Trail, uh, basically, I did the full loop, including every spur trail. So the total for that was around 9 miles, maybe a little bit over 9 miles. So, kind of keep that in mind for this. It includes the full loop. This is in Arches National Park. The Devil's Garden Loop is absolutely spectacular. In that 9 miles or so, there was about 1,100 feet of elevation gain. I would kind of suggest, like most people are, what they're going to do is they're going to go and take a look at Landscape Arch, which is absolutely incredible, and maybe do a little bit more. I would kind of caution you that if you do decide to go past Landscape Arch or do the primitive loop section, that it does get significantly more challenging. So keep that in mind as you are going. Some suggestions for watching this video. I know it is 3 hours long. I'm not gonna, I mean, I probably could ramble on for the full 3 hours, but I'm not going to. There's a few things I'd like to go through just about the park, but just as far as suggestions for watching, and kind of first and foremost, it's like what to expect. Like personally, I'd like to know what's going to happen on the trail. What am I going to see? Is there a lot of shade? Is there a lot of water? In the case of this trail, there's really not much shade at all, and there's really no water at all. So, it'd be good to know that. So you can kind of take a look, and you might look at the arches and think like, do I want to go all this way? Do I not want to? So I think first and foremost, that is the best usage of this video. Secondly, feel free to mute me and watch this on a treadmill. I think if you're running inside or if you're on a treadmill, this is a pretty cool video to watch, as well as all of the Walk the Parks videos that are of hiking, because you can just kind of throw it on there and have something cooler to watch than just the news or something. At least you can feel like you're on a hike if you're walking or running, and kind of a virtual reality experience, sort of. You can also just leave it on in the background as kind of a peaceful view. Like sometimes I almost use these videos like on mute as a screensaver, so I will just mute them, have them on in the background, and watch them like that. So that's something to consider. And also, kind of an accessibility issue, right? So for whatever reasons, maybe you live across the world, maybe just you have some sort of physical ailment or something that prevents you from being able to go and enjoy Devil's Garden Loop on your own. So hopefully this will provide more accessibility for those people that are out there. So whatever you're into, take it take it as you will. If you want to listen to me kind of babble on, that's fine. If you want to mute me, that's fine too. I am going to try to figure out how to set up chapters. So if you want to just look, I'll kind of set them up right at each of the arches, and you can kind of take a look there. But I'll probably commentate just for at least the portion of the trail which most people will do, which again I think is going to be like the trail's about to split up here, and you can go down to Pine Tree Arch and Tunnel Arch, and then you go up to Landscape Arch. So it's, if you're gonna go and do any hiking in there, I would really recommend. I mean, if you're super crunched for time and can only do one, I would recommend Landscape Arch. That's gonna be about like 1.8 miles round trip or so. That is, Landscape Arch is just absolutely spectacular. So that's something to consider. But if you're going to do a little bit longer, I would for sure consider going down to Pine Tree Arch and Tunnel Arch. It's maybe a half mile extra, and both pretty cool arches, and not a super amount of effort involved. Now, if you are going to go beyond Landscape Arch, like I said, it is a great adventure, but just be ready for it's going to up the difficulty significantly. Like here, you notice we're on like big, wide, beautiful trail, which is awesome. But after, or on the primitive trail side, and on the trail past Landscape Arch, just things get significantly more challenging. You are kind of on slick rock. You have to use your hands a little bit. Someone like me, that's what I'm looking for, and I enjoy that. But for a lot of people, maybe it's not what you came here for. So kind of keep that in mind as you're going. So we just saw the split down to the right here. We're going first. First, we're going to go down to Tunnel Arch and then Pine Tree Arch. I did this hike pretty late in the day, I think, and I'm here in the month of May, early May, so kind of the peak season, but there still weren't that many people. Um, as you can imagine, I mean, Arches National Park, it's super, super busy, so it might be good to go super early in the morning, later at night. Parking definitely does become an issue at Arches National Park. One thing to keep in mind is that when I visited, which was in May of 2024, the park did have a reservation system implemented for entry into the park. You actually needed to have a specific time that you had to enter. I was able to bypass that because I had reservations at Devil's Garden Campground, which is an awesome campground right next to here. I literally walked from my campsite to start this trail, which is really cool. Right now we're at another intersection. We're going to go right and check out Tunnel Arch and check that out first, and then go down to Pine Tree Arch after this before we head over to Landscape Arch. But anyway, Devil's Garden, if you had a campground reservation, it allowed me to just enter. I don't know what the specifics were. Maybe it was after a certain time during the day. But basically, I'm saying all this. I don't have the 100% of the details. I don't want to quote them on here because things do change. The Arches National Park website is going to be your best bet for that. I was able to buy my entry tickets, though, on recreation.gov. One other comment about Devil's Garden Campground, and that is I listened to a podcast the other day, and it was on the list of top 10 most booked campgrounds. Like, it was like over 95 or 98% booked all the time, so very challenging to get a spot there. One recommendation I would have if you really want a spot there is we're kind of taking a look at this first arch here, which is pretty cool. Tunnel Arch. But one comment about campgrounds, especially busy campgrounds, is one way to kind of try to get what you want would be to just get one night and then kind of switch up campsites every day, which I know can be super annoying and maybe won't work for you at all depending on what you are into, but maybe that does work for you and it'll be just fine. So just kind of keep that in mind. Maybe that's a little tiny, not secret, but just something you might not think about. Just do one day, like one night in one campsite, and then the next night in the other campsite, and then maybe you'll be able to get it based on that. Whereas if you want like 4 nights in a row, it might be extremely challenging / impossible to be able to get those campsites. One minor sidebar, man, I am. It kind of frustrates me how like so many campgrounds have switched over to reservations, which in some ways is great. Like in terms of you want to book your trip, you want to have it all planned out, you want to know where you're going, you got it all dialed in, and that's cool. However, sometimes you walk around the campground, it's like super booked, quote unquote, but there's a lot of the campsites are empty. And granted, I do understand that sometimes people start and, they might not show up till 2 o'clock in the morning, but a lot of instances they just never come, and there's no real penalty for that, and that can be really frustrating. So, and I kind of get it, like, because sometimes there's not even a refund, so, people have to go out of their way to cancel, and maybe they don't, because it's like, it's only 20 or 30 bucks or whatever it is, so they don't care, or they might, like, maybe we'll keep it, because maybe there's a, 1 in a trillion shot that we'll go there, but anyway, I wish there was a bigger penalty or maybe like a big deposit you had to pay, just because I've run into that quite a bit. And while I do understand how nice it could be to be planned and kind of organized way in advance, some people, not that they're just procrastinators, but, you have last minute plans that you want to, you have an opportunity to go to Moab, Utah and go to Arches National Park. So, you want to get those last minute reservations. It's a bummer if the campground has empty spots, but it's, quote unquote, 100% full. So anyway, just a minor 2 cents on that issue. But as far as other lodging, like, you definitely don't have to stay at the campground. Moab, Utah is a fairly, I don't really want to call it certainly not a large city or even a large town, but there is a bunch of accommodations there, and there's a bunch of campsites too. And if you do, one recommendation would be there's something called Ken's Lake Campground, which seems to be one of the last ones to get fully booked. Still a pretty spot. Definitely exposed campsites, but kind of all the campsites in this whole region of the country are quite exposed for the most part. So, especially at this kind of elevation range. So just consider Ken's Lake. I mean, I've noticed that it tends to have more openings than some of the rest of the places. So something to keep in mind. At the end of this video, there are some photos. Like you'll notice we pass a lot of signs along the way, and maybe I don't get the best video shot of them. A lot of those signs, if you're really interested in hear what they say, are all the way at the end of this video. So keep that in mind. Maybe fast forward all the way to the end whenever you're done watching if you'd like to. All right, so now we are at Pine Tree Arch. So again, it's about half mile total out of your way to go to both of these arches, but pretty cool and not too challenging to get to or anything. So would recommend doing this if you're not going to go on the longer hike. If you're going to do the whole loop, I mean, maybe you could skip these because you see so many others in the entire loop, but I think it's worth it. How many times are you going to be here? That said, I've probably been to Arches National Park. Actually, I think I've only done the full primitive loop like I do here maybe 3 times total in my existence so far. So I'm super fortunate though. Just in the fact that I've devoted so much time to going to these places. I also currently live in Colorado on the western slope, so this isn't too far. I mean, I can hit this up on the weekend. It's not like it's exactly close. It's a few hours of driving, maybe 4 hours of driving one way, but still that's within striking distance. And the best thing about that is, Colorado tends to be the best in winter because you have skiing and all the winter activities, and in summer because you can go, when there's no snow at all. But in that fall and winter period, it's a little bit not as ideal. But the fall and winter are the ideal times to visit here. I would comment that it can be super hot here. So I know a lot of people do get vacation or go in the summer, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. It can be super hot and just be, even if you're a person who's, used to the heat or from somewhere hot, it can be just relentless. Like you notice right now, I felt like you had cloud cover. I am here in the beginning of the May, which you can kind of get in this region, kind of all over the place weather. I mean, it's possible to get snow, but it's also possible for it to be very hot. But in the summer, you're pretty much guaranteed that it's going to be very hot. And it kind of quickly becomes, if not dangerous, just not that much fun. Like if you're just getting beat down by the sun and just beat down by the heat, you really have to manage even like fairly easy hikes quite a lot to not risk, there's potential to have some sort of heat illness, but really just to have fun. Like it's challenging to go on a long hike. You really have to start like at sunrise and not go that long. Otherwise you just ends up being a grind and you're just getting destroyed by the sun, or in a worst case just becomes dangerous. So make sure to bring a lot of water. A lot of things. One thing people forget is not just water, because you don't want to overdo it on water either, but salt tends to be the most important thing. You really want to have as much salt or just tons and tons of salt, because your body just sweats it out. And you'll find that while the humidity is really low here, you don't even realizing you're sweating a lot of times. Like sometimes you might, but because it's so dry, the evaporation occurs so quickly. It's pretty dramatic. So something to keep in mind. Something else to keep in mind would be, leave no trace. And you hear this thrown around a lot of people talking about leave no trace, but it is really important. I mean, it comes down to, you really want to leave only footprints, take only pictures. This area is super beautiful, super unique. I mean, there's supposedly over 2,000 natural arches around this area, which might sound like a lot, but I don't know about where you're from, but there's not too many arches most places that I've visited. So this is a very special, unique area, and one that should be, treated as well as we can. And, the one source I looked up said that Arches gets over 1 million visitors per year, which is pretty significant. This park is pretty small. I also couldn't help but think, like I read, I believe it's called Desert Solitaire. I read that a long time ago, and it sticks out to me because the author lived and worked in the park as a ranger, I think in the 60s and 70s, or maybe the 60s. I don't know what the exact time frame of Desert Solitaire is, but the description is so different from what it is today. Like sounds like there was like a pretty hardcore 4x4 road that had to be traversed to get into the park, and now it's like it's paved all the way up. And gosh, parking can be hard, even though there's a huge parking lot for this place. But it's crazy to think that it can be hard to find parking a lot, but it's definitely true. So, just and all that is to say, we want to really preserve these places. If we have kids or even if we don't have kids, it'd be really cool for people to be able to check this out in 100 years and 200 years, etc. So, we don't want, nobody wants to see, um, carved etchings or garbage or really anything else. So like a few things to keep in mind is like when you are hiking, there's really only three places you want to be hiking in this type of desert environment. That would be on an established trail like we are right now. Second would be like on this slick rock. So like if you're on slick rock, there's not too much stuff you're destroying. So slick rock would be these rocks we're kind of looking at. Obviously, maybe these wouldn't be the most fun to climb up, but in a lot of places you can get up on them and it's flat or it's just safe to walk on. So that, or third would be like sandy washes. So you don't really want to walk in sand off trail a lot. There's this stuff called cryptobiotic soil, which is like it kind of looks like it's like kind of wavy or kind of a rough pattern with kind of darker specks kind of on it, and you might just think it's dirt, but that's actually cryptobiotic soil. It takes a long, 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 long time for that to grow and flourish. So if you just trample on it, it can take like hundreds of years, or it might never recover in a place like this. So again, you want to stay on established trails, on slick rock, or at the bottom of washes. So a wash would be like the bottom of a creek bed, like a sandy wash. And the reason for that is water will come through, like in the kind of flooding that occurs, and wash everything away anyway. So anyway, just keep that in mind. And then also, if you notice, there was water at the trailhead, and there was kind of a couple pit toilets right there. So try to do your best to use those before you go out on any trail, or especially if it's there, just because it can be kind of hard to. You don't want to be going way off trail, trampling stuff, and you also don't really want to, like, it can be hard if you have to, dig a cat hole. Some on this slick rock is kind of impossible. So for that you'd want to carry some sort of wag bag or kind of dig a hole 6 inches deep and try to carry out your toilet paper and all other garbage. That can be disgusting, and some people grew up in an area where it's more acceptable to, kind of leave your toilet paper. My strategy is to just bring a Ziploc bag, put it all in there, and then leave with that. So for some people, it might be like, oh, this is common sense, but maybe some others don't know. When are you guys going to Arches National Park? Let me know in the comments below. I'd also be curious to know, like, did you go on this trail? Did you like this video? Why did you watch this video? Are you on a treadmill? Would love to hear about it, about your trip or your journey, or why you're watching this video. If you have any suggestions for me or anything, as I said, I'll keep yapping on for a little bit here, but I'm not going to go forever. I'm going to try to put some chapter kind of markers in so that you guys can take a look at that. And then, let's see, what else? Put some chapter markers in. I'll just maybe at the trail intersections, I'll try to, and then at the arches themselves, so you can kind of watch ahead. But again, I'll keep talking for a little while longer. So if you do go to Landscape Arch and back, it's about 1.9 miles round trip. Double O Arch and back is 4.1 miles round trip. You add about a mile if you want to go to Navajo and Partition Arches. And then it says about 8 miles. I got a little bit longer than that if you go on all the spur trails. You can also go, there's this thing called Dark Angel. Now, Dark Angel is not an arch. It is kind of like a spire. Still pretty cool, but you do have to go off the trail for that. So again, hopefully this video will help some people make decisions, like, do you want to do everything? And like I said, there is a lot of other really cool stuff in Arches National Park. Like Delicate Arch is amazing. Like I would say Delicate Arch is probably the most famous arch for sure. It's on the Utah license plates. It's such a popular, like the stereotypical rock arch, I guess, that you'd think of is probably Delicate Arch, which is reached via a 3-mile round trip hike in the park. Absolutely gorgeous. Highly recommended. Challenging hike though. You are on slick rock. again, one to be considerate of the heat because it's fully exposed, but absolutely beautiful. You can also go to like the Delicate Arch Overlook trail. You can get a view from it, but you're quite far away. But again, if you're not in the, if you can't for whatever reason go and do a 3 mile hike or don't want to, maybe worth going over there and checking that out. It's really pretty. I mean, this whole park is really amazingly beautiful. So I already mentioned that there's, over 2,000 natural stone arches. And then there's, pinnacles, there's all these giant rocks, all sorts of cool erosion activities and geological forces occurred around this area. I've been to certain places like Capitol Reef and other places that talk about how some parts of this area might have been under the ocean like 13 times in the history of the earth, which, on the one hand, is kind of, how to say it, like almost unbelievable. I feel like, aren't you guys amazed by that? Like there's so much science that's really hard to believe. I mean, nowadays, I guess people don't believe a lot of stuff, but I mean, and you shouldn't believe everything you read at all. I mean, obviously, take your, take everything in stride and take your time to do the research on anything really. But it's fascinating that scientists have such a or geologists, kind of claim to have such an understanding of all this stuff. It's pretty fascinating. I haven't read the books to fully understand it myself, but maybe I will someday. So, Arches was established as a national monument in 1929, and then later as a national park in 1971. And it's over 76,000 acres in size. To me, I don't know what that means. I mean, that's pretty big, but not as big, certainly not as large as Yellowstone or something like that. Like the road itself doesn't take too long to drive the whole way on. So besides Delicate Arch and Devil's Guard, another really cool place is Fiery Furnace. Now that's kind of like the next level up from this. So if you were to come here, I feel like most people probably just make the trip out to Landscape Arch and back. Then other maybe more adventurous people are going to do this full loop like I do over the next like 3 hours. But then other people might want more than that even, and then maybe the next step after that, if that's easy and you want more adventure, would be Fiery Furnace. That does require a permit, even for day hikes and for everything. And you do have to go in and watch a video and talk to a ranger at the visitor center. Like you can I was able to purchase the permit ahead of time from recreation.gov, which there are a limited number, and then get the permits when I arrived. I did have to watch the video and speak to the ranger. Very cool though. There is like a loop that's signed in Fiery Furnace, but it's like very kind of challenging to follow. And also, you can go off trail and explore and stuff, which is super beautiful. But it really, like, I went and found what's called Skull Arch, but it's so amazing. Even like with a map, with the GPS, with everything, there's like so many different drainages. Like I think I went up two, like that I was like, oh, this seems like it's it. Both times, and they were both wrong. I had to go the third time up just this little tiny drainage. There's all sorts of like super complex topography here. So if you do go off trail, definitely be careful, because not that you can get yourself in trouble, but you can get lost or get yourself in trouble if you were to keep going and then try to find your way back and be like, where am I? So just keep that in mind. All right, so now you can see Landscape Arch right there, which is really cool. I think it's really cool anyway. So Landscape Arch is apparently the longest arch in North America. It's about 306 feet from base to base. I can't help but look here and wonder, like, how much longer does Landscape Arch have before it collapses? Like, as we get closer, you can get a bit better perspective. I mean, obviously it's a better perspective in person, but it's just so thin seeming and over such a long span. It's amazing. I don't know how long something like that lasts. So right here, we're looking at this, but the trail splits right here. So you can go to the right, and this would be where, you could, if you wanted to do a counterclockwise loop, that would be the primitive trail. In some ways, might be slightly easier to go to the right, because there's one section that's like quite steep on slick rock that might be nicer to go up than to go down. But I don't know, for whatever reason I chose to go this way. I think most people do go this way because you kind of get lured in by landscape arch. That would be my guess. And I mean, this trail's definitely more trodden than the latter part of the primitive trail. And as you'll see, I mean, the trail definitely, after this next section right here, it definitely becomes more primitive. You're climbing up a lot. You can kind of see an arch on the right as well. I believe that's Partition Arch, and we do climb up to that as well. See if you can see kind of towards the right side of the screen. You see kind of a hole in the rock there. I believe that's Partition Arch, which is pretty cool. Like I said, the main draw to this whole area is probably landscape arch right here, which is well deserved. Absolutely spectacular. As far as, plants you encounter here, we have mostly junipers, pinyon pines. There are some various cacti, a bunch of different wildflowers which are pretty. And in terms of wildlife, you have mule deer, desert cottontails, kangaroo rats, as well as like a bunch of different lizards. There's also, birds. It does have the typical national park squirrels and stuff too. I would recommend strongly against feeding them. Um, they can bite you and give you diseases, and that would be a terrible way to end your trip. As I mentioned, the best time to visit the park is going to be that springtime, probably March to May. Might even avoid late May. It can start to get really hot. But spring also, I do want to warn you, can be pretty highly volatile. So you can definitely get, very cold weather or very hot weather. So just be prepared for that. But you can be assured that if you go like later, like in June or July, that it's just or August, that it's just going to be nasty and hot. And I don't know. I mean, it's still a beautiful place to go, but just be more careful. And if you can at all avoid it, I would recommend that. But also not just March to May, but September to November are also awesome times to go. And then winter, even though this is desert, desert can be quite cold, and they definitely do get snow and stuff here too. So be prepared for that. And then, see, look how beautiful. Look, isn't it amazing? I can't just. How much longer will that stay? But they think that scientists believe that it took over 300 million years to create all these arches. So for me, that just kind of explains how, or just kind of makes me think about how skewed our perspective of time is. I think the average human life expectancy is like 80 something years old nowadays, but 300 million years ago is when a lot of these rocks were formed. I mean, maybe 150 million years ago, this sandstone is what this one source I'm reading says. So I don't know, but maybe it'll last a million years. And it looks so fragile, but maybe in rock years, a million years is short. I really don't know. But that said, I wouldn't be that surprised if that collapsed within the next month, the way it looks. But super beautiful. Highly recommended going here. It is just gorgeous. And as you can see, it is pretty like this in this really popular part of trail. There is kind of some restrictions. You're really not supposed to go out on arches at all, so be aware of that. But when you go other places, there won't be a fence everywhere to guard you from that. You just kind of have to make your own decisions, and please be smart. Don't get on top of an arch and break it, and it'd be terrible because you'd ruin an arch and probably yourself as well. So next up, we kind of switch and go to the, well, we don't switch. We keep going on the trail to the left, and then this is really where the trail gets more primitive. You could just go up to Navajo Arch and Partition Arches, which are both really cool, which wouldn't be the whole loop, but at least get you a little bit longer hike. One thing I want to mention too, like this 3-hour hike, I do tend to be quite a bit faster hiker than most people. Like, I'll stay and enjoy an arch for, sometimes I'll take an arch and enjoy it for an hour or something, but most of the time I'll just hang out for like a minute and then just kind of keep going. So a lot of times I like to move. So first off, that style I find is very different than a lot of people, but people might be hearing that and just scoffing at how I could spend so little time. But it is what it is. We all have our different styles. So just keep in mind that, and I tend to take less breaks as well. So just keep in mind that do tend to be a faster hiker than most people and take less breaks. So I would not watch this video and think like, oh, cool, we can do the full loop and every single thing in 3 hours. I do have a significant amount of experience hiking in the desert. And if you do attempt this loop, you will learn it is quite challenging sometimes to even know where the trail goes, and even I got confused in a couple places. But it might take quite a long time, like if you're hesitant, and that's not a bad thing to be hesitant. You want to be able to stay on trail, just to leave no trace, and just to obviously you don't want to get lost in the middle of the Utah desert. So obviously take your time to navigate, but again, that is another thing that could add a significant amount of time. So you might take more breaks, you might spend more time at arches, and you might go a little bit slower. Just throwing that out there. I'm not the ultimate hiker by any means. Like even here, I was a little bit confused, but I did end up going the right way. But it's kind of like, actually, to be honest, here I was kind of like, am I going the right way? So it's good that I mentioned the confusion that can occur here. But yeah, you go up and then there's some, I knew because there's like that brown kind of stick sticking up with some arrows on it, and that was a good indicator that I was going the right way. So it's like, okay, don't go to the left with it all blocked off. But it can be tricky too, like in a lot of these areas with slick rock, and I do sympathize with like the resource managers because you don't want people to get lost and go off trail, but at the same time, it's like, do you want to have big markers everywhere or big cairns, which are piles of rocks marking the trail everywhere? Not really. So it's a difficult battle. Like it's a difficult balance. Like how much do you want it to be a pure wilderness experience versus how much do you want people to stay on this direct path? And there's pros and cons to either side, obviously. So now we kind of climb straight up there. We're going all the way up. So this is, like I said, the trail immediately kind of gets, for some people, more adventurous, which I really enjoy. But for a lot of people, this is quite dramatically different than just the flat trail kind of, well, it's not completely flat, but like very well manicured, like minimal obstacles. And now we're literally directly climbing up sandstone, slick rock. So just keep that in mind. I'm more like, yeah, let's go on this 3 hour hike and then do more hikes afterwards and maybe do some off trail adventuring. But you might be even more extreme and be like, I want to go canyoneering and bring all this technical gear and ropes and harnesses and all that stuff. But you could also be on the other side where you just want to go and keep it mellow. There's no wrong way to do it. So just want to kind of throw out everything there. Sometimes when I make these videos, I try to think about that. Like there were a couple comments calling me wimpy or something. And it's like, well, I don't know. Everybody just has their own different style. It's all good. I think us humans, we tend to think that, our way is what's right. What's right for us is right for everyone. And I don't think it's in some cases, maybe that's true, but in a lot of cases, I don't think it is. And particularly in something like outdoor exploration, I feel like it's you can't do it wrong unless you're like littering and cranking loud music. I don't know, just being a jackass or not like leaving no trace. But other than that, and the vast majority of people fit into this, it's more just about doing whatever you want. Like if you want to do a 1 mile hike and chill for 3 hours and look at an arch, or take pictures or paint it, that's fantastic. If you want to run the loop, I support it all. Just good that we're getting outside. It's so hard nowadays. Our phones are so addictive, and the internet, there's so much, social media, which I guess YouTube is. On the one hand, it can be good because you could like see a place like this, if you watch this video and kind of be prepared and know what to expect and kind of get a preview, or just kind of take a look at a place that you would never normally go or have something in the background when you're exercising. just to have a better landscape than like the news or whatever. Um, but there's so much also that's just like completely not useless, but just it's I don't know. I think you guys get the gist of what I'm saying. I love going out in national parks and going outside and hiking though. It's just such a nice experience. It's kind of like I look at it like this. Like I don't, a lot of people are into video games and stuff like that. I look at this as it's kind of like your own video game. You're on an adventure. You're on a mission. You're kind of, ooh, where do I go? How do I conquer this hill, or how do I conquer get down there, which looks steep? It's just fun. It's like real life, like a real life video game, which is awesome. Obviously, you have to get here though, and are in the middle of nowhere for the most part. I mean, you are. I mean, Moab is right there, but southern Utah is one of the most remote areas in the country. One comment on that is that the night stars are just fantastic. If you're in Utah, really this whole region, like all this slick rock and all these red rocks, is called the Colorado Plateau. And you might think like because it's called that it's mainly in Colorado, but it's really not. It's really Colorado. It's really just like from Grand Junction west, kind of Montrose west, which is very western Colorado, but then a lot of southern Utah, and then down to like the Grand Canyon, and then over into New Mexico, all includes the Colorado Plateau, which is all this kind of smooth red rock, almost like the Mars alien landscape, is like how I like to think about the designation of the Colorado Plateau. And it's an absolutely beautiful area, which is awesome to explore, but it's so remote. But if you are around here, try to stay up at night and look at the stars. It's spectacular. Absolutely amazing. Absolutely. All right, so what's the difference between an arch and a natural bridge? You're all asking. So, an arch, apparently, most of them are formed like you have slick rock, and then a number of things occur to create those fins, like you have erosion, and maybe there was some uplifting, upheaval, whatnot that might have occurred, some shifting like tectonic plates, things like that, that might cause those fins to occur. And then once they're in the fins, which are like tall, narrow rocks, like long, tall, narrow rocks, once they're in fins, then kind of weaker parts break off of the fins, and you can create an arch in certain instances. And for whatever reason, this area was kind of blessed with a lot of rock that creates arches. So what's a bridge? A natural bridge tends to be created by water. So just by erosion. Like, so for whatever reason, water over millions of years kind of, whether it was a stream or whether just through storms, just kind of beat down below a thing and create below the rock, and it creates a natural bridge. Now, I do want to comment that this is similar to, in my mind anyway, it's similar to lakes and ponds. You'll hear a lot of people argue different things for what a lake is and what a pond is. In my experience, in all my hiking and stuff, I've learned that there are many ponds, things you would think that would be called a pond that are called lakes, and many things that you would think are lakes that are called ponds. I don't think, some people are like, it's based on size. Others, it's like an inlet and an outlet. A stream, makes it a lake. I would say maybe those definitions are true in like a scientific sense somewhere, but there are some tiny lakes in Colorado, and there are some huge ponds with inlets and outlets in the east and the Midwest and places like that. So, and I'm positive too that there's a lot of things in the in this region of the country that where the arch, which is really a natural bridge, or a natural bridge which is called an arch. So just keep that in mind in your studies. And if you're really long and passionate, or if you really think I'm wrong and are passionate about it, you can throw me a comment or throw me a message. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. So Arches National Park, so beautiful. All right, so I think at this point I'm actually going to stop my commentary. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Let me know if you think it'd be better for me to make another version of this video, or if I have other videos which are longer than this, which I do. Like, is it better for me to babble through the whole thing? Is 40 minutes enough? Now you're just kind of bored and watching it, or like, would it be interesting and you'd listen to me babble on for 3 hours, and you'd find that interesting? I mean, I can do more research and have more stuff to talk about. I'm sure I could babble on, but I just don't think it's like that useful. But maybe I'm wrong. So up here, this is the next kind of, you can go straight and go to Double O Arch, or go left to Partition Arch and Navajo Arch, which of course I'm going to do because I'm going to do it all. Double O Arch, very cool. So again, I personally think the main usage of this video, although I do think that the treadmill stuff is really cool. I think there's a big audience for that. I hope people would like it. I would like it if I knew about these videos and I was on the gym on the treadmill. But I think for the most part, people are going to be using this to reference like what to expect and things like that. So feel free to kind of keep watching this video. You can have it on the background just in mute, or fast forward if you want to just see the intersections and the arches, and we'll go from there. I'm not the biggest YouTube expert. I'm going to try to put on chapters on this video and go from there. But basically, overall conclusion, Devil's Garden Loop, absolutely amazing. Even if you're just going for a shorter hike, go to Landscape Arch, absolutely fantastic. If you're in the mood for a bit of more of an adventure and you're fit and you have the water and snacks and preparation for it, the whole loop is pretty fantastic. Hard to go wrong. There's so many arches along the way. All of them are cool in their own way. Highly recommended. Thank you so much for joining me. I would love it if you like this video, please give it a like or a thumbs up, and subscribe. I have tons more of these videos. I will try to release them. I'm now in a position where I have some free time. I'm going to try to release a bunch over the next few weeks. But of course, saying something like that, because this video hopefully is going to be out there for a while, so saying that doesn't really have any bearing, but that's okay. So anyway, I would love it if you had any feedback for me as well. Thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the rest of the Devil's Garden Loop in Arches National Park. This is Blake from Walk the Park signing out.